Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today is our second episode of the Culture Podcast with the Keeper of the Jewels. Today, I've got a really amazing slate of things to cover with you guys. But just to kind of give you a background for those that are new to the Culture Podcast with the Keeper of the Jewels, we want to be, or we are your source for Black excellence, inspiration, and empowerment. Our podcast helps educate, uplift, and entertain millennials and others on the amazing contributions and legacies of African Americans. So, just so that you know, we're going to be covering so many different things within our podcast. We're going to be covering Black history. We're going to be covering Black culture. We want to make sure that you know where to go for all of these things. Come to us here at the Culture Podcast with the Keeper of the Jewels. My goal, my mission statement for this podcast is I help create the honest narratives of American history from African American perspectives for millennials and others that tell our truths, inspires, motivates, and empowers healing and reconciliation by using our artifacts, our stories, and digital products to help create a more inclusive and diverse human experience. Okay, so you're going to get everything here. I'm really excited. Make sure you check out our first episode to really go over in depth our full mission for the podcast. So, who am I? My name is Eric Majette. I have the pleasure of being who Dick Gregory named the Keeper of the Jewels. This has been my mission. This has been my purpose, to make sure that we're keeping our stories and telling our stories, and also keeping our artifacts. My goal is to make sure I'm empowering everybody that I encounter to be the keeper of the jewels in their own lives and families. I have saved our history upwards of about 15,000 pieces. My oldest original artifacts are 15th century maps of Africa, and my most contemporary is a whole plethora of RIAA certified Black platinum and gold records, and everything else in between. I have the definitive Marcus Garvey collection, which actually today is his birthday. Today is Marcus Garvey's birthday. We're taping on August the 17th. It also happens to be my great-grandmother's birthday. So I'd like to wish my great-grandmother, Elizabeth Walker, and also the great Marcus Garvey, a happy heavenly birthday. So that's one of the things today I'm really excited about. And as well, I have the definitive Marcus Garvey collection, the definitive Malcolm X collection, definitive Madam C.J. Walker collection, definitive Annie Malone collection, and I have some amazing runner-up collections within the overall collections. So this is kind of what has given me my purpose. I've been collecting over 32 years, and this is what kind of makes me an expert in this field, collecting and preserving 15,000 original Black history artifacts. So you can expect a once-a-week podcast. Right now, we're kind of working out the day, so stay tuned. We will let you know all of that information, but this is episode 2. Today's episode is entitled The Blind Side of White Supremacy. So to give you an overview of today, we're going to have a special guest, my brother, Ernest Crim III. You know him on all your social medias. Man has taken social media by storm by educating everybody on Black history. He is an amazing resource. We will go into his bio momentarily. And then after the interview and coverage with Brother Ernest, we're going to go into discussing The Blind Side, the actual movie, or actually the inspiration behind the movie, and this new lawsuit that was filed by Michael Orr. So stay tuned, and we'll be back with our segment with Ernest Crim III. So, welcome back. We're entering into our segment now featuring my guest. This is absolute delight. I'm really excited because I have with me today Ernest Crim III. He's an anti racist educator, he's an author, content creator, and also a hate crime survivor who uses Black history narratives to empower and educate families and train educators through an equitable lens. Ernest is a Southside Chicago native and graduate of U of I. He is a former high school educator of 12 years that I have the privilege of calling my friend and my brother. He has worldwide reach and through his platforms and has been teaching and empowering over 2 million people monthly. So I want you guys to put your hands together and welcome my brother, Ernest Crim III.
Hey, what's up, man? It's a pleasure and honor to be here. Thanks for having me, brother.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. You know, I absolutely I can't even put into words the amazing honor it is to call you my brother. Like we have been fast friends when once we were introduced by Coach Val,
Yes,
and
indeed.
it was literally immediate. You know, sharing the same purpose, sharing the same mission. It is definitely an honor to have you on the show, and for you to be my first guest of the season.
Likewise, man.
Um,
Looking forward to it.
Definitely. So the first question I really want to start off with, and I actually should have told you this before. Um, Normally on every episode, what I have a guest do is to bring on an artifact of theirs that means something very important to them. Because what I want to do is really encourage our people to start becoming the keeper of the jewels for themselves and for their families. And is there a piece that you have that is very near and dear to you, that either represents your family history or someone that you love in history?
Yeah, I would say, I'm not sure if this is going to be video too, but I
Yes,
have
it
a
is.
picture of on my bookshelf of
Mhm.
my ancestors and those who
Mm.
passed away. My some of my grandparents, my great grandmother, and I have a picture of my great grandmother, Willie C is what her name was. We actually just had a family reunion a couple weeks ago,
Mhm.
and it was based on her side of the family, her husband's side. And I just love that picture because that was around the time when I met her. I
Mm.
was relatively young when she passed, but I do remember being at the last family reunion before we had this one in 2023 and seeing her. And it's just a reminder, of that legacy. And on the other side, my maternal grandfather, I have a picture of his grandmother who helped raise him because he had a young mother. And it's a black and white picture. So, and when I see her, I literally see myself because I
Mhm.
have many of his features and my mom's features. So, those are near and dear to me.
Okay, so it is video, so we do have the video portion of it. So if you want to share the picture, please feel
Oh
free.
yeah, yeah. Let's go
Okay.
ahead and grab them since we're here. So this is my maternal
Yeah,
great
bring that a
grandmother.
little bit closer.
Okay, oh, I got this light. Okay, there
There
we
we
go.
go. Yep.
There we go. Yeah, so that's my mother's
So that's Willie C.
great grandmother. This is my mother's great grandmother. Her name is Helen Shelton.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, and then we have
Ah, that's Willie C.
Willie C. Burns right here.
Okay,
All right.
beautiful.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Yeah. Now, see, that's really what I want to encourage because right now it's our responsibility. You know, as a gatekeeper, it's our responsibility to really encourage our history because who else is better to tell our history than us?
Mhm.
We have enough people telling our stories, as we're going to talk about later on with the blind side. That's a prime example of the need for us to control the story, and control the narratives. So it's very, very important that we are the ones that are starting to preserve, not only just to tell our stories now, but to really be good stewards over the history that we have now, because those coming after us will have a hard time being able to trace their history. Some documents are actually coming available a little bit more now than ever, but if they don't know the information, they don't know the names to be able to do
Right.
this research. It's up to us now that do know and care to write these things down, to preserve them so that it's easier for the next generation to be able to know their history,
Yeah.
because as a teacher, as a educator, you know the importance of self-identity, and creating that self-identity is paramount by having a foundation of knowing who you are
Yeah,
and where
and
you
it's
come
a great place to start. When people talk about history, you don't have to be, a professor. You don't have to have a degree. Like, start with your family's history. Teach your children that. Teach yourself that. Ask your relatives questions, and then you can then focus on the broader context and fill in the blanks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's literally how I got started. I started at 8 years old, starting with my own genealogy. I wanted to know who I was. And then from there, it expanded later on, as you said, into the global context of who we are as a people.
Mhm.
And that's probably the best thing I could have ever done. So now getting into really the topic, how did you fall in love with your history?
Man, I think it was just the nurturing I had growing up with my parents, just growing up in an environment on South Side of Chicago where our house was literally like a Black History Museum, is what I would say. Like, for the people who can see the bookshelf I have, I have the Juneteenth flag, I have an African drum, I have a mask somewhere up there, I have a plethora of books. That's like what my mom's office looked like, and it wasn't a huge house. So if you walked in through the front instead of the side, it was like her office slash the living room, and it had all of this stuff up there while she was working. So that was the environment I was immersed in, and to see that consciously all the time, that was being downloaded in my subconscious. I didn't know it though. And one of the things that stood out the most to me about my upbringing was the fact that we had these posters everywhere called Great Kings and Queens of Africa. And it was a series by, surprisingly, Budweiser. And I always jokingly said they must have had some Black folks working for them in high ranking position to say, like, yo, we're gonna make sure we put these out, because not only did they have a collection for Black history, but it was African history, our people before enslavement. I saw that all the time. So when I was bused to a white school, I didn't go in, I don't think I went in with the perspective of I had to fully assimilate. Of course, some of that takes place, but I always had this background knowledge of who I was, and just asking questions to my parents, asking my mom why we never had a Black president, and just always wondering and understanding that what I see on the outside, although it doesn't always look the best, doesn't reflect who we truly are, man. And I took that until I went to college. Almost flunked out after my first semester, and I said, let me take a Black history course, because I always wanted to sit down and take one. And then it's been a wrap since then, man.
Wow. And that's really funny that you mentioned that. I actually have that Budweiser series, or that's, is it Budweiser? I can't
It's
remember
like
which one it is.
there's drawings of all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I have that
yeah.
whole thing, and then on the back of them, it gives the background of
I have
each
to
one of
see if
those
I can
leaders and
find
everything.
those, man, for my
Yeah,
kids.
I
Keep moving.
got them. I actually remind me, and we'll go ahead. I'll get you a copy of them.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, because I'm actually going to be creating a series based off of those.
Powerful.
So yeah, we'll definitely get back up on those. So one of the things that really was a defining moment that I realized in your life, that over 25 million people witnessed the horror of, um, was a hate crime that you actually experienced that was committed against you. Really, really sad. But I think it's a very important part of your story. So if you don't mind, I'd like to go ahead and show the people so that they can get an understanding of who you are and how you got to where you are now.
Definitely.
All right.
What you call me? Say it again. Say this. She knocked my phone. So if I hit her, what happens to me? What happens to me? What happens to me? She knocked my phone out my hand. She calling me a nigga. Y'all gonna let this happen? What type of people are y'all? You don't know me, man.
We don't bother. You're acting like a nigger, bro.
You act. Keep saying it. What did you call my wife? Give me your name too. Give me your name. Give me.
Over me and call me a nigger.
Check it out. Check it out.
Yeah. The restraint has been noted across the world. That's one thing. What in you allowed you to be so restrained? What was going through your mind at that moment?
First thought, I think so. Normally, when I even play that, when I'm speaking to people, I normally don't even like look straight at it because I'm just in my mind trying to focus on what I got to say after and all of that. But every time I see it, I notice something different, man. You know how they say a picture is worth 1,000 words? That video to me is worth 1,000,000 words because I see something different every time, especially after what we experienced collectively and saw in Montgomery. I've reflected on it a lot since then, actually. And I think the biggest disappointment I had, which I've said numerous times, was we had no help, but we had what we thought we did. Like when I have white friends, and my white friends know how I roll. And I couldn't call them friends unless they knew how I rolled, unless I knew where their heart was, right? I couldn't imagine them sitting there. I couldn't imagine, I'm sorry, I couldn't imagine myself sitting there if they somehow decided to say that word to another black person I didn't know. Like that to me, we'd be fighting. Like that would be fighting my friend. Or so I think the disappointment, if you notice, I was directing it towards them a lot.
Right.
And I
What
think,
kind of people are you?
yeah. Like y'all,
Those were her friends.
Those are her friends. She was with two black people. One was a brother. And in my mind, how I grew up, my mentality was not, I never really thought about fighting her. My mindset was I'm gonna be fighting him.
Right.
So I'm keeping, as I'm recording, I'm keeping a close eye on him to see if he jumped.
Right.
He never looked at me. And this was a shorter, swole guy. So I knew he was probably strong. So I'm just keeping myself ready, what I'm saying? Just in case. And I just couldn't, in my mind, like, he never looked at me. He never said a word. It was the other black lady saying everything.
Yeah.
And I think there was just a disbelief that this is happening to me as someone who honestly, like, I mind my business.
Yeah.
The way I speak and teach now was only really in the classroom, and of course, I got to speak about my ancestors. There had to be something in me that, as someone who usually physically fought a lot growing up, there had to be something in me that said, this is going to be a long-term fight, like sit. You are fighting you're fighting the long game, right? You're fighting for the long term. This is a marathon. And if I hadn't been holding the phone, maybe if they weren't there, it could have been different. But I think everything worked out the way it was supposed to be, because I think what I had to learn through that is what I'm doing and what I'm dedicating my life to for the rest of my life. There's no retirement from this. Is fighting, is educating, is helping grow our community, and knowing what I could have done to that person. Just off the sheer fact that I'm a 6'2", 200-pound man. Man, it's like, was it worth it considering what could have happened and where life would have taken me, having two kids, having a job responsibility? It was the understanding that there were so many other people in that situation that dealt with something similar and could not do anything to fight back in their mind. And I think what we were faced with was the opportunity to make things right. And I was not going to stop. Like a lot of us, like we'll see an incident like that, and it'll last probably, back then, maybe a week, is when like the comments were going crazy. Everybody was talking about it. Now it's maybe 2 days. How many days have we talked about Montgomery? Like 3-4 days. Then we move on. But we don't often think about, what about the people who were there involved in it? How does it impact them? What about the folks in Montgomery? How does it impact them? How does it impact, Sandra Bland's family? Years later, how was Emmett Till's family impacted? Mike Brown anniversary a few days ago, how were they impacted? Like, this is a long-term thing. And even afterwards, like a year and like 2 or 3 months later, I was still in court. And I told myself, as a fighter, because there are so many ways to fight, that I'm not stopping. Because it wasn't just I got to get you back. It was now I have to stop playing so small, because as I'm going to court, I'm not just going to court and I'm like sharing it with my family. I'm trying to be a living example of what we have to do over the course of our lifetime and generations, because it's never just a singular moment. And if we feel as though we have to fight every fight physically, we will soon wear ourselves out. Our existence, and even like, and Dr. Greg Carr said something so powerful, man, after, in response to this incident, like, we were not even made to fight white supremacy. We don't exist to fight white supremacy.
Yeah, it's
So
the onus is not on us.
not on
It's
us.
actually on white people.
It's on them. So
Yeah.
we perfected how to react. We perfected how to sustain ourselves through this travesty of an existence that we, have been brought in with them. We've made the best of it. We've made great things, but we are at our core, at our essence, we are creators and we are builders. And I never for 1 second thought that what she said about me was true.
Right.
But it did make me angry, because how dare you?
Yeah. And then the other thing that I really want to point out that people may not know just from the short clip was that that crime was committed against you and your wife.
Yeah.
Now, what they really couldn't see was when she spit, she spit on your wife.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I love Cassie. I love her because
yeah,
the restraint both of you showed in that.
Unbelievable. And to be on the same accord, because like if she had jumped across and started hitting her, then it would have been 2 against 4, 2 whatever. It would have been. And the thing that's interesting too is like there was a lady who eventually came, because I think she kind of felt like something was going on, but it was loud music. We were kind of isolated, so a lot of people didn't really know what happened or what probably would led up to it, because afterwards, like, she's fighting the cops. She's trying to call the cops on us. This is bizarre, the whole scenario. She was, before I started recording, she was trying to call the cops over. So by the time they got over, after this happened, they go after her, which is like, in my mind, I'm thinking, you calling the cops over, you saying this. If I jump on you, who are they going to think? They're not going to stop and look at the video.
Right.
They're going to see a black man just, dude with a fro.
Yeah.
Like whooping on this.
Yeah.
What's going to be his first response? These armed security guards.
Yeah.
I ain't got time for that. This was like a week after Alton Sterling for Philando Castile. So if she had jumped in, bro, it would have been a wrap.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying in terms, ain't no telling what would have happened.
Right. Yeah. And that's sad that we actually have to be conscious of these things, even trying to balance our natural reaction to protect ourselves. And you protect your wife, all of these things. There was so many things going on, so many reactions that could have happened. And it's really sad that we have to be fortune tellers and all these things and take into account every scenario in the situation before we respond.
We go in there, bro. Like, this is a majority black event, but we're still at this event cognizant of all of that.
Yeah.
Even though she was the minority in that situation at that event.
Right. And of course, with white supremacy, that privilege, they're always thinking that they're majority in the world anyway, and that's a lie. Well, let's just dispel that myth. We are the majority of the world, the darker people, as Mark Scarvey would say. So we have to actually start stepping out of that minority mindset. We are the majority in the world. And that's another reason why we actually need to stick together. And it's so amazing in the time frame that we are now. We're really starting to mimic and really tap into the spirit of our ancestors, even with Montgomery. That was a spark. That was definitely a spark, and a foretelling by, the prophet Malcolm X, because he said there was going to be a time that this was going to happen and that we were going to stick together. So, we're actually fulfilling prophecy still even today, How did this impact your life, and did it shape or change your direction?
Yeah, man. It was so there are things in life, like, I feel like we're destined to do, or we're supposed to do. Some of us don't always take the route we're supposed to because of systemic circumstances, just a whole bunch of variety of issues that can come our way. I believe, I know I was supposed to do what I'm doing now. And maybe it would have taken me a little bit longer to go out there and do it had this not happened, you know, but it would have happened eventually. It just accelerated it to me because how we work as people is even, you know, it's like somebody will tell you something needs to be done, but unless something's attached to it, like you can get this, or this is going to happen if you don't, the punishment or the reward, we don't often feel the angst to do it. Like prior to that, I was considering, you know, people will find this funny, honestly, like in hindsight, I was going to I was actually starting to write a book on health because I had gone through different, you know, different diets and stuff. And after college, trying to find different ways and things. And it was going to be called the psychology of losing weight or something like that, man. Because in my mind, I kid you not, earlier that year, because me and my wife were saying we need to have some type of side business or something. We were going to do like natural cleaning products, and we were going to do I was going to do this health book and speak about that. And I remember telling myself, there are already enough people speaking about Black stuff. I kid you not, I said that. There are already enough. And I'm telling everybody out there, there's never enough for what you want to do. And for what you want to do, it doesn't mean that it's going to be out in the front. Like it's what you do. Like there are never enough chefs. You know what I'm saying? There are never enough artists. There are never enough scientists. Like we need your particular contribution. It might be on the same side of this puzzle, but it's a different piece, you know? So it made me say as an educator, like I was already mentoring kids. I wasn't doing speaking engagements. I wasn't doing like, you know, public social media posts, but I wanted to teach because I wanted to mentor. And I felt like history was the best route to remind us of who we were. This told me, all right, bro, you gotta stop just doing this in your class though. Like you gotta do a little more. They already took down my Facebook page. So it was like, okay, make a public Facebook page. Now I'm gonna start posting videos. One of my inspirations during that time was Kev on Stage. I remember seeing him a lot, liking his videos, and like, man, this dude just sit in a room and talk to himself. How does he, like, you know, on a camera, like how does, and at that point, I wasn't even thinking about it. I got something to say. My first video was an update to people. My second one was, it was like the Freddie Gray situation. So then I started going in on that. Then Colin Kaepernick happened. I started going in on that. And it just became a thing where, like, you know, videos became my outlet. And then I began speaking to people about my experience. And I said, look, if this could happen to me, right, I'm sure this is happening to our kids. And also I wanted to use that hate crime as an entry point for people, because people, oh my God, people in my inbox, white folks, like, I can't believe, I'm so sorry this happened to you. And my response to people is like, okay, yeah, it's bad, right? Yeah, right. But why are we more disgusted at that than the hood? Why are we more disgusted at that than the legacy of redlining? Because if you think that's disgusting, let me take you on a trip to where I grew up. Let me take you on a trip to like other parts of the South Side or any South Side in any major city. Let me take you there. Let me show you what was not just done 50 years ago or 20 years ago, but like 2 days ago to our people. So I want to say, here, look at this video. Yeah, it's horrible, right? But the reason why that can happen is because that person was bred in a society that taught her that was okay. And it bred those Black folks that taught them that they had to sacrifice their Blackness or Africanness to even be in her presence.
Yeah. So what was the outcome of the case? That's ultimately what I do want to get into as well. Like what happened? I know you saw this all the way through the courts. What was the outcome?
So what happened is, so a little bit of backstory. When she got grabbed by the officer, they threw her out. And that's kind of where the journey began, because we knew it was a crime, right? We like, okay, bro, you threw her out? No. She needs to be arrested. So that's when we decided to leave the event early. It was still going on. He tried to, I'll never forget, this dude tried to give us some free VIP access to this event and then give us some more drinks, give us some drinks on the house. And I could tell he knew he messed up, because he was whispering to his partner. The partner was like, you just let him out. You ain't figure out what happened. I was like, bet. So we left. And then my wife said, you got to post a video now. Post a video now. So it was like 3 different videos. I put them together, put it online. And the first goal was to get her arrested. And that's when the fight began. Like, it's the accountability. It's, you know, the accountability could be beat her down in that moment. And the accountability could be, I'm gonna see you through. I'm about to make your life miserable for what you did.
Make an example.
Both are effective. I think in some ways the long term, pain. The long term like recovery can be worse than somebody just getting one beat down.
Absolutely.
So it took us from that was July 30th of 2016. So now we just passed 7 years, man. Magical number, the
completion,
number, right? She I got her arrested. Well, because it was a collective effort. I just posted the video. I got information from all the people by mid-October of that year. Now, here's what's cool about it to me, because within a day she got fired from a job because people were like on her, right?
So it took 5 months.
It took 2.5 from so like July. It was pretty. So let's say it happened August 1st, essentially around August.
Oh, right. 3 months. Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't count.
That's all good. No, so she got fired immediately. People, bro, was sending me her. I had her address. I had everything. I had her address. All of that, man. But when she got a new job, I think she thought it was over. But behind the scenes, see, again, when everybody stopped worrying about the case, I had a couple interviews. Now we on to the next thing on World Star. We on the next thing on Media Takeout. I'm still fighting. I'm still going to work. I have to go to work 2 weeks after and teach students after this happened.
Right.
So I kept calling every time I had a break. I'm calling the detective. What we got? What's the update? What's the update? And then on that day, mid-October 2016, she got they went up on her at her job, bro. That's what the cop. It was I think it was a Puerto Rican and it was a black woman who arrested her. It was a beautiful thing. I wish I could have been there to see it. And in Chicago, man, and they arrested her probably while she was frying some fries. So and then she posted bond. Bond was $50,000. And we went through the court proceedings, man. It got pushed back several times because of the judge, and then we eventually went back to court the following October. This judge, now kid you not, was the same judge, y'all, that he was the judge over Jussie Smollett's case, and he gave Jussie Smollett that prison sentence for faking the hate crime, right?
Right.
So this dude was over a real hate crime case and a case where he faked the hate crime, and he gave Jussie, he sentenced him to more time.
Yeah.
For faking a hate crime. That's whiteness in a nutshell. So she eventually got 3 months. He dropped the felony, though.
Wow.
Yes. He dropped because the hate crimes. So look, if you call somebody the N-word and do anything after, that's a hate crime. I don't need law to tell me that's a hate crime. So even though it wasn't classified as it, it's a hate crime. He just decided because of the experience he had as a white man in America that he didn't think that it was proven that she was violent or she spit because of our race. It was just that she was a bad person. He says something like that. If you ever find the file transcript, man, he said some nonsense like that. So she got 3 months in Cook County jail, which I would have preferred the felony,
right?
But I just, for me, it's like you got to go to jail, something. And in my mind, bro, because I'm like that elephant, bro. I don't forget. So it was like as I sat in court and we were awaiting the sentence, and I'm looking at the judge and. She's to the left of me. It was like the weirdest thing, bro. I told myself, and I never told the assistant state's attorney this, of course, but I was like, yo, if she don't get sentenced, then I'm going to jail. and bro, it would have been a physical fight a year and some later because of my let me go through this route. Let me do this. But if y'all don't do what y'all supposed to do,
justice will take place.
It would be even crazy because y'all gonna arrest me, but not arrest. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how that happened, man. Of course, like
wow.
I think it's poetic though, because you know what? In this country, she shouldn't have got sentenced to a hate crime because this entire country, the existence of it is a hate crime. So they can't even see how something could be influenced by hate because their entire existence in this country is because of hate.
Absolutely.
So it's like the air they breathe. So to me, it was almost like the unfinished story. She got 3 months for the assault, not for the hate crime. That reminded me that I still got work to do.
Yeah.
Not for the system, but for our people.
Wow. Bro, I didn't know this part of it. So it's so much to break down with this in itself. This is bizarre. But this is the blind side of white supremacy.
Exactly.
How completely poetic and I'm really messed up because I didn't know this part of the story.
Oh,
You know,
bro.
when I came up with the episode title, but even seeing like this is a blind side of
Yeah,
this white man's supremacy. Like literally,
yeah.
he couldn't even get into his mind that this was the seed of hate. If you couldn't put your finger on one.
He saw and they wheeled in like, and mind
Oh,
you,
I'm
this
sure they
is
had a big screen.
this Chicago. Like Chicago was trying to prosecute this as a hate crime. They brought in the TV. They showed it to him. We had all the evidence. Now imagine if I didn't even have evidence. Then
Right.
it wouldn't even be no point to argue with the
Right.
case.
Yeah. It would be your word against hers.
He would have lied, all that type of stuff.
Right.
So it's poetic to me just because like I know and I dedicated my life more so to teaching us because and I do the anti-racist stuff too when I'm doing staff stuff and all that type of, but it's mainly us and our kids because I want them to know that it's probably you're gonna probably face something like that or something systemic. You might not even know it's racism, right? But I want you to be so empowered that inspires you to keep going because like again the best, you know what I'm saying, the best defense is a good offense. We got to be more proactive. Like here's the quote at the beginning of my book: if you don't know who you are, anybody can name you, and if anybody can name you, your answer to anything. So like I apparently didn't answer to that because like that ain't like you ain't gonna disrespect me and my family and my wife like that.
Right.
So every time I speak, every time I go somewhere, I carry us with us, and I'm reminding people of what she did.
Absolutely.
That's a hell of a fight right there.
Yeah, no, it really is. It's still, man, I'm just in shock. But also, I kind of want to segue right into what actually kind of spawned out of that experience. You actually created a book. Your first book was Black History Saved My Life. So I definitely want everybody to go ahead and go to your website to check out your book. Make sure you support my brother, his book, you know, really get to know his story. I'm sure you guys have been impacted and captured by his story, which we shared so far. Make sure you actually get his book so that you can actually understand the entire story. And definitely, again, Black History Saved My Life by Ernest Crim III. And you didn't stop there, though. You wanted to take it a step further. Staying in the true fashion of an educator and a griot, you decided to go ahead and do your second book, The ABCs of Affirming Black Children.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Oh man, you know what? I left my copy in the other room.
No,
Like,
I
yeah.
got
No, matter of fact, you got a copy by you?
I got a shoot. I probably was shoot. Oh,
It should be right straight ahead. Is that a
I
picture?
got them so many. I'm looking all over.
Yeah.
We're working on
people...
the second edition. I'm working on that.
Nice.
Hopefully get that out.
Volume 2.
Fall. Yeah, we're just gonna update it. Got a few people I want to add. I want to add a couple little activities and stuff. But man, you know, it's I just, you know, having kids. My kids, well, I got 4 now. But at that time, I had 2. They were 3 and 1. So like there was no, couldn't explain it to them, right?
Right.
But raising them while I was growing in this work, I just realized how important it is for our kids to know who they are. And even just thinking about the important role affirmations played in my life growing up, that's one of the most important stories I tell people is the affirmation my mom gave me when I was young, or even just the affirmations my dad gave me as well. And I wanted to say, let me reverse engineer my story now. So the parents who have the Black History Saved My Life with the teens or whatever, now I'm gonna break this down. Kids, you got something. This is about like the first part. Then we're gonna do something for the visual aspect. It's to say this: we have to build up our cultural esteem and our group esteem before we even go to school and enter this world. Because again, the worst type of racism, y'all, is not the N-word and spit. That's the most. That's the most. Probably the most. One of the most disgusting you'll see. It's not up there to me, but it's one of the most. That's like, you know, you hate. You don't want to see that. But again, it's the systemic stuff. It's the fact that we can send our kids to school and they don't learn these important things. They don't see themselves. They can go to church and see a white Jesus. You know, they can not see anything wrong with the society we live in.
Caesar Borgia, but go ahead.
Right. Exactly.
That ain't Jesus.
That ain't Jesus.
Yeah, but definitely no. You hit the nail on the head. You definitely hit the nail on the head. And it's important that we actually reveal these things to people because they have no idea. They think, you know, we've been brainwashed that for 500 plus years that this visual, this white man with this hair, it was supposedly Jesus.
Yeah.
One, it doesn't fit the description if you want to go off a description based in the Bible,
Right.
but also that was a well, sacrilegious to say, but anyway, that was a ode to this emperor's son that was killed or that died early, Caesar Borgia. So had nothing to do with anything religious. It was his reminder, making sure that his legacy lived into perpetuity.
If you had hair like that in that region,
In that region, right?
well, you'd be sweating. You'd be walking around looking like a wet mop all day.
For real.
Like, ain't no way. Like, I mean, and we know, like, at that point in time, there weren't any real barriers separating these people. That region would have been essentially Africa. Like, we talk right next to Kemet for one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it should be pretty obvious to people.
Should be, but stranger things have happened.
Right.
But now I really want to take a quick break. We're going to take a really quick break, and then we're going to transition into our next topic. Is brought to you, and our sponsor for today is actually blackhistoryarchives.com. This is where you can go for your Black history wearable art, support a Black-owned museum by buying your wearable Black history artifacts. So we have on the website, you can go ahead, as you see here, blackhistoryarchives.com/shop. You can go on here and get a plethora of Black history artifacts inspired wearable art. So we have t-shirts, we have posters, patches, pins, caps, everything. We have literally all your Black history needs. Make sure you go in there and check us out. So that's our sponsor for today, blackhistoryarchives.com. Now we're about to get into some interesting stuff. Continuing on with our topic for today, the blind side of white supremacy. We're actually going to get into the story of Michael Orr. As you guys know, the movie The Blind Side that starred Sandra Bullock. This is that Michael Orr which we're talking about. So a lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't know or realize that the story, of course, was slightly fabricated for your enjoyment. That's one of the things. And that's actually one of the things that he took issue with, was that they use this story, and actually, which is traditional when it comes to white supremacy, there's always a white savior complex that happens in a lot of our movies. They have to insert themselves into the story to become the actual, hero, if you will. And the whole premise of The Blind Side, the movie, was about Michael Orr, a homeless Black teen, had drifted in and out of the school systems for years. Then Leanne Toohey, played by Sandra Bullock, and her husband, which was Tim McGraw in the movie, Sean, take him in. The Tooheys eventually became Michael's legal guardians, transforming both of his life and theirs. Michael's tremendous size and protective instincts made him a formidable force on the gridiron, and with his help from his new family and devoted tutor, he realizes his potential as a student and a football player. So that's the premise of the movie. And there's so many different things. If you go on, I like to encourage our people to actually find out facts for themselves. If you go on the web and search the Shelby County courthouse or probate court, you'll find the actual filing from Michael Orr. So you can go into details. It's very thick, and this is a double-sided packet. But there's a few things that I want to kind of point out, Ernest, and then we can kind of go into details about what you think. So just kind of giving the basis of the story, the real story. Right now, Michael Orr is 37 years old. Okay. He grew up in the Hurt Village projects in Memphis. In April 14th, 1996, he wasn't even quite 11 years old when he was put into the system. He became a ward of the state. He was one of 12 children, and he wound up getting lost in the system, as most of our kids do, in the court system after they're taken from their homes and put into other homes that don't reflect them, group homes, all kinds of things that don't even do anything for them as a child, but that's a whole nother subject. The difference between the movie and the story was Michael was actually a smart kid. Michael actually, the sad part was he attended 11 schools in 9 years. Was left back in the first and second grade. And as an educator, you know, kindergarten and those first couple of grades are the foundation of any education. So if you are missing, you know, elements in your foundation, of course, you can't build upon it. But anyway, summer of 2002, one of his friends' fathers, Tony Henderson, actually saw Mike's drive to pursue a better life for himself. So he actually got in contact with the principal of the Briarcrest Christian School and got him admitted. Okay. His junior and senior year, he excelled in basketball and football and also was a great student. He made the first string in Tennessee All-State games for both football and basketball. He was selected to play in the Army All-Star Bowl his senior year. Now, by this time, his senior year, he has football scholarships pouring in. Okay. So we're talking about, this is all kind of before the interactions with the Tuohys. They were just one of the many benefactors in his life that saw you know, a black kid in need or a young kid in need, you know. But during the summer of his junior year, he actually winds up staying with his friend's parents, which is Sean and Leanne Tuohy. He suggests in this lawsuit that the Tuohys actually saw a gullible young man whose athletics talents could be exploited for their benefit. Now, this is what he's claiming now. What he also revealed was the family never actually took legal action in juvenile court to assume custody of him while he was still a ward of the state. In July 2004, Michael was an adult senior because, remember, he got left back in his first and second grade. So he was now a 18-year-old.
Okay.
His senior year when they invited him to come and live with them. Okay. Now, this is when it starts getting interesting. They never did anything while Michael was a minor to gain custody of him. They waited until he was actually an adult. And instead of adopting him, now there are no laws in Tennessee that say you can't adopt somebody after the age of 18. But what they decided to do was they kind of created this family and this trust and told him, kept, encouraging him to call them mom and dad. And they actually kept telling this young man that they were going to adopt him. Okay. This just screams predatorial. But anyway, almost immediately after he moved in with them, the Tuohys presented him with paperwork, legal papers, that they claimed were a necessary step in the adoption process. Okay. Michael trusts them and he signed on the dotted line. Okay. Unbeknownst to him, until February of this year, 2023. Okay. Now, mind you, this is 9 years later. This is 9 years later that he's finding out that the paperwork that they had him sign were not adoption papers and were not the equivalent of adoption papers. It was actually a petition of appointment of conservators. Now, the sad part is it was filed by Deborah Brannon, who was actually a longtime friend of the Tuohys. And she actually was who they encouraged him to refer to as Aunt Debbie. Now, mind you, she files this lawsuit, or excuse me, files this paperwork for conservatorship. Now, what people fail to understand, because when you go online and you see all the different commentary and everything, they're like, oh my God, you wouldn't have anything that you have now if it wasn't for these people, blah, blah, blah. But if you're actually having the best interest of somebody, you could actually have adopted them. There was nothing that was keeping them from adopting him the formal way, because they said they did this to create a relationship because of the booster situation at Ole Miss. So that's all it would have taken. But this actually gave them total control over his ability to negotiate or enter any contract, despite the fact that he was over 18 years old and had no physical diagnosis or psychological disabilities. Okay. The sad point about it still to this day is that this conservatorship is still in effect. He cannot make any financial or contractual agreements without their consent. This man has not had any psychological disabilities or physical disabilities, but still at the age of 37, he is under a conservatorship of these
I think to put something in
predators.
perspective too, is like Britney Spears
Yes.
has a conservatorship, and we've seen, her early exposure to the industry and just kind of the psychological issues that emanated from that. Even when we see clips of Britney Spears, we can tell that there's some things that just aren't right.
Right.
We don't like. There's nothing that tells us that Michael Orr has a similar situation, yet he has a conservatorship. That's wild, man.
Played in the the NFL. Like,
how much of that did they get?
Now this is the crazy part. So the Tuohys in part 13 of the actual lawsuit, the Tuohys, it said that the Tuohys negotiated for themselves and their 2 natural born children contractual prices of $225,000 each, plus 2.5% of all future defined net proceeds. Okay. But all of this was contingent upon Michael's signature with Fox. Okay. Now, to this date, the Blind Side movie has amassed gross revenues of over $330 million and still earns large sums of money, right? Part 14 says that they also engaged in a contract that in 2007. So this is amended. This is 3 years later, where they go ahead and they actually negotiate life story rights agreements that gives away all his rights to Fox without payment whatsoever into perpetuity, unconditionally and exclusively throughout the world. So this man does not control his likeness, his image, nor anything else pertaining to the benefit of his exploitation of his being.
This is white supremacist culture at its core, or
at its best.
The notion or the practice of so-called white supremacy, man. Because for one, so let's go back a little bit. The first thought that pops up is like, if anybody's ever seen that Colin Kaepernick show on Netflix, in the first episode, he shows he compares football players primarily, compares them to like the process of being auctioned off, or just the way bodies are sacrificed and the way they're viewed and stripped down. And this situation reminds me of that, because they essentially they scouted him. They saw this, tall, it's a big black dude, plays football.
We can make already excelling prior to the intervention
from a troubled environment, quote unquote, that their descendants created, and then come back to that science experiment that we call projects, where we put people in these situations with a lack of resources and expect them to be able to thrive, and say, okay, this is the person we're going to get, and then we're going to have this minor. I don't care if he was 18, he was a minor.
Well, he was a minor before then, but also even if you did in those circumstances, it's just it's unfathomable, because this shows that you had something in mind.
How was that your thought process, bro? Like, how do you think of, I'm going to completely take advantage of this child? And not only are you going to take advantage of this child, that's your mindset, not helping give them a stable environment. I'm going to take advantage of them financially, and I'm going to make a movie about the story.
Right. And actually, the author of the book is their longtime childhood friend of the Tuohys. So the original author of the book.
I want people to understand how dangerous this is, and how he needs to win this case. But this is very dangerous, because regardless of the outcome of this, for many Americans, for many people worldwide, the image is already supplanted in our mind that he was saved. And this narrative in white culture that we need them to save us.
Right.
We need y'all to save yourself. Stop being racist. Like, you're hurting yourself. But it reeks of not just the white savior mentality, but also this mindset of they need us. We have to help them. Poor black children If it wasn't for us, they wouldn't be able to fill in the blank. If it was like, I was watching this clip of this documentary, I think it was from like the 60s, and they were interviewing this white guy whose ancestors enslaved black folks in South Carolina, and they were asking him about like how you view black people, and he was essentially saying like, well, we think slavery was a good thing because without it, they wouldn't know English or they wouldn't be able to read. Like, y'all, like, no, like your measurement of intelligence is not the end all be all. It is not widespread. Like, and it's so sad, but that's the mindset they have, and that's what they infiltrate. It's not just the blind side. It's like anytime you watch a movie, y'all, that's based on a true story, we have to have in our mind that it's been fabricated for Hollywood. So let's do our own research. That's why I'm very hesitant to watch certain historical movies, and some I have not seen, or I have to make sure if I'm not that educated on it, I read up on it before I see it, such as the case with like some of the elements of Harriet Tubman's story, for example,
Bro. Yes, that's a major one that I actually I cite when it comes to the white savior complex.
Yep.
The worst part of this is that it, like you said, it absolutely reeks. It just stinks of white supremacy, mindset. Colonization. They colonized just like they did Africa, just like they did everywhere else that they've taken over. They colonized this black man's life, this black child's life, because they saw dollar signs. We've always been seen as currency. And that is the same exact mentality that kind of goes from time to time to time. It has never changed. But as you said, I really want to kind of point out, this same supremacy mindset, they try to so let's take Florida, for example. Revisionist history. That's what we're dealing with right now and fighting against in Florida. They're going back and revising these things. What did we need saving from? Civilization started in Africa.
Exactly.
All these cultures, white cultures that we are proselytizing to believing that were the archetypes of civilization, all got civilized in Africa. The Romans, the Greeks, all these cultures that we always point back to, that we've been taught were the archetype of civilizations. They were civilized and taught and trained in Alexandria. Alexandria is where? Egypt. Egypt is where? Africa, the cradle of civilization. So even when you go back to the definitions or even the actual creation of civilization, it's in Africa. So what were they saving us from?
Exactly. And then the narrative would be pushed that, like it's so funny, man, because if you really dissect the origins of that that white supremacist culture, it's a projection. Absolutely. So everything that they really feel about themselves, they project on us. Like going back to my story, I always tell kids like, she could only give me that type of energy because she hates herself. Like I'm not about to go up. It's crazy, right? We don't go up, bro. We don't just go up to white folks like that.
Right.
By and large, we don't do that. You know what I'm saying? So like you're projecting how you really feel about yourself, how you want to make yourself appear that isn't necessarily true. You're not heroic. Right. There are some folks in your society that have fought back, but like what you're trying to project to the masses, man, is like this insane narrative, bro. And I think we have to understand too, this movie was so successful because just like Freedom Riders, it showed a white woman who we know is historically a Karen. There are books written about how vicious white slave owners have. I got one that I have not started reading yet, but like slavery could only be sustained because white women agreed with it too.
Right.
Like for every Freedom Riders type movie, there are millions of black teachers in our neighborhoods doing what they're supposed to do. Where their movies? There are so many. I have family members who adopted black children. Where are the movies for that?
Right.
So like we take care of our own, and for every story like that, they show her swooping into the projects to help save this child.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that there were black folks in Michael Orr's life.
Oh, definitely. It's spelled out. And he says in particular that there were other benefactors besides them. They were some of the later ones, but they actually, he says basically that they were the ones that capitalized on it. They saw that this gentleman, and this was a thing that was very detrimental. And he also, causes that it caused damage to his brand, his life, and everything that he's still experiencing now. And the issue with that was that the movie actually benefited more and was turned to make her, basically the white savior of the movie. It took away his intelligence. They made it seem like he was actually disabled, mentally disabled or developmentally disabled, which was not true. It even showed in college, like his record now shows that he was actually on the dean's list, all these things. He's excelled in math. He excelled in reading, all these things. So they took away these things to be able to sell this white savior image. This was all purported and intentional. They really colonized this man's story, revised the history, to make themselves look like the hero of the story, which is everything that you were just talking about. It's a mentality. And that's so funny when it comes down to even to the name of this episode, The Blind Side of White Supremacy. White people don't see this as something that is detrimental, as co-opting, as dangerous. This is that mindset that you're talking about, that you have to be a sick person to want to change the story so that it makes you reflect as something that you're not. Why can't you just be happy with who you are, what you do? Right. Why do you have to change a story, make somebody else's life damn near deplorable, just to be able to say that you did something great? Why couldn't you be a great human being and just do what you needed to do and didn't have to take over this man's life?
Yeah.
So what makes it even worse is the lawsuit in section 15 goes on to say, if they knowingly allowed this deal, and the deal that they're talking about now is where they actually gave away all rights into perpetuity exclusively worldwide. If they knowingly went into this or allowed this deal to happen, while securing millions for themselves and their kids, they actually breached their fiduciary duty and should have to pay Michael all the money that was received from the film, plus interest from the time that it was received, plus punitive damages, and to be determined, by the court or whatever. But the thing about it was, they even went back in 2010, 3 years later, they went back and amended the agreement of the life story rights, which Michael never received money for. They donated $200,000 in the name of Sean Toohey to their family's foundation because of the success of the movie. Allegedly, it said that, it didn't go directly to them, but also they're saying that the company did not inform Michael of this amendment that happened 3 years later. But then even on top of that, like, his lawyers now are really, like, he's got some good representation, because it's going into now when they go further down. And when I tell you this is like crazy, I want to say it's 30 something pages, but ultimately I'm going to skip down to the back because there's some things I do want to point out. So in section 32, he's talking about how he's still suffering continued damages and wants an injunction to stop them from using his name, his image, and his likeness, because they're still using it. His name, his face, everything is tied to every stream of income that they have right now, even down to their foundation. They're still using his image. They've purported this lie that they've adopted him, that he's their adopted son and everything. And that's the basis of all their income, her speaking engagements, all these things. Now, the family has come out and kind of, the father and the son has come out and kind of, been trying to combat this and said that Michael came to them and was trying to extort them for 8 figures. And that was how this breakdown in communication started.
They call it extort.
Yeah, right. When they've extorted him from the beginning. Now, the crazy part is in the last section of the lawsuit, the interrogatories, they are setting out everything for the family to hang themselves.
Mm.
Here are all the questions that the lawyers want them to answer. They want them to give their information or whatever. They want them to describe their relationship with Michael from 2004 to the present. And also the legal standing they've had with Michael for each year.
Mm-hmm.
They want them to detail the reasons why they sought conservatorship of Michael. They want him to detail all the actions taken by them to prepare them to become co-conservators of Michael. They want them to detail why they chose to obtain conservatorship instead of formally adopting him.
Mm-hmm.
They want them to identify all instances, including but not limiting to their public speaking, their blog, their foundation, where they have referred to Michael as their adopted son. They want them to describe and identify instances where they have received financial gain for referring to Michael as their adopted son. They want them to identify and describe all the instances where they've received and expended monies from contracts and agreements. Like they're going in, like his lawyers are asking for an accounting of everything. Now, one of the things that the law says that they're supposed to do when you're a conservator of anyone is you're supposed to give yearly accounting of the funds that were received, how it was dispersed. Nothing has ever been dispersed.
Mm-hmm.
No accounting has ever taken place, has been filed, nothing. Now, ultimately, in the original agreement, it was supposed to be until he was 25 or it was dissolved. The man is 37. They've never done anything to dissolve this relationship. And as we said, it's still in existence today. So this man cannot benefit from his own likeness, name, or image without consulting or getting consent from these exploiters.
You know, some people have been calling this era, you know, people the saying F around and find out. This is the find out era.
Oh, yes.
This is like people are coming back for what's theirs, what they're rightfully owed.
Yeah.
And now it's the climate forward, man, because we can see it all out in the open. This reminds me too of just like college players, college athletes.
Oh, yes.
Especially D1 at primary school. Previously they could not benefit at all. They were thrown the bone of your education is paid for, but that's nothing compared to how much they're making off
billions
of them.
they've been making off of them. Absolutely.
Conversation I have frequently with my wife when we talk about this is like, well, if I was an athlete prior to when the NIL deals became legal, I'm trying to talk to a lawyer.
Absolutely.
Because you think about how many football games were released, the basketball games, they would have them on there or in the game with just a number but look like them, the jerseys that were sold, how people like the Fab Five had to sacrifice their recognition of the Final Four banner because they, you know, took some money from somebody or went out on a dinner or whatever,
right,
or accepted a gift. Like it's insane to think that, you know, with all of this, like we have it's crazy, man, because it is essentially shifted from the brutality of slavery to that mindset has never left those in power. It shifted from that to then say, how can we then profit and exploit them in other avenues that aren't as outwardly brutal as slavery was? The entire system is still set up that way. And that's why it's so hard for people. The lack of sympathy in these situations will come from, well, he was a pro athlete, or how dare you say athletes are like this when they're making millions of dollars. But again, look, if they're making that much, who's signing? Like I think Chris Rock said that, like, wealth is the person that signs the contract. So like, how are they benefiting from it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it's if they're able to kind of give these, you know, these athletes these quote unquote absorbent prices or salaries, how much are they making?
Man.
You know, you have to realize, and this is one of our detriments in every area. We are the creators of everything, but we are exploited by everybody else for whatever reason. You know, we don't realize our worth or our value until a white person puts a price tag on us. That even goes with our history. You know, in my interaction with securing our history back into Black hands, 95%, probably even 98% of the dealers I deal with and secure our items and our history back from are white. We never realized the value of our history until a white person put a price tag on it. When our ancestors die or our family members, older family members pass away, we're trying to sell the house. We're trying to get rid of everything. So, you get Goodwill to come in. They pay $500. They say, well, we'll clear out the whole house. They give you $500. You're excited. You take the money. Everything is gone, including your birthright, everything that links you to your history and everything. They go ahead and take it to a dealer, or even a secondary shop or whatever. They go ahead and sell off some of these things for a profit. They made $500, or they paid $500 for it. They may get $2,000 for it, right? For everything that they sold off. Then from there, that dealer then goes ahead and maybe puts it up for auction. The auction house then puts a price tag of say $5,000 on it. That's the minimum. By the time everything goes ahead and gets sold on auction, you have the other people like me and others that are in the field of collecting or repurchasing and securing our history back. We paid the $25,000 for it. So all the wealth that has been gained off of our history, off of our artifacts, never benefits our community. Getting it back does, but the transfer of wealth has all happened just to be able to secure these items back in our hands so that we can tell our own story and reclaim our birthright. That's the same thing that's happening with our bodies and our talent. You have the music industry. We go through a third party to go ahead and distribute. All distribution in every field, whether it's the NFL, the NBA, the music industry, it goes through a third party that we feel that we have to have in order to, get what's, owed to us. We're always exploited in every aspect of our lives when it comes to being black in this world, and that's the blind side of white supremacy that people don't see and don't understand. We're getting scalped in every area, whether it's an agent, whether it's the Tuies that are coming in and quote unquote being this white savior that's coming in and providing this best life for this kid. But what they did was they changed the narrative that took away his power. It took away, his tenacity, his grit, that showed all the things that he did. He's the one that excelled in school to be able to be eligible to be in sports. He was on the dean's list. That all was stripped to be able to sell this image, this story, this colonization of this black man's life that allowed them to steal to today. Even when this lawsuit is filed, they still have conservatorship over this man right now. Why is that okay? That's the blind side of this white supremacy.
Man, it makes you think of the record label contracts.
Everything.
For us to be roughly 13%, which it's more than that, but roughly 13%, we are the cornerstone of the culture.
Of culture.
Country.
Absolutely.
The pop culture, the media, the arts, and they realize that. So their strength in this situation, in this forced relationship, then is creating the avenues that we legally have to go through in some ways to fully maximize our profit. Like, we think about the 50th anniversary of hip hop, man. This is a black culture, black American culture that we created and cultivated from jazz, really. Like, jazz artists were doing a lot of that. Soul and funk artists were doing that. We put it together, and we're not the biggest benefactors of it, No. And like, it's the same thing. Like, even going basketball with Jordan. Mm-hmm. Jordan is a billionaire, but like, how much is Phil Knight worth? You know what I'm saying? Like, absolutely. But there is no there's no Nike. Forget all that. Like, there's no.
There wouldn't have been a Nike, right? Yeah, there wouldn't have been a Nike without the endorsement of Michael Jordan.
There's no shoe collected.
Yeah, everything has been built off of black bodies. It reminds me of Fannie Lou Hamer, where she's talking about the flag was drenched with black blood. This country was built off of black bodies, and the wealth of white supremacy has been built off of black bodies and continues to be built off of black bodies. First it was the auction block. Now you have the NFL draft. Now you have the NBA draft. Now you have the record industry. Yep. Now you have the film industry. All these things are taking advantage of black people and our talents. Yep. We create the culture that goes worldwide, but we benefit the least from the culture.
And if people don't assume or think that it's that important, like, oh, it's just sports, or it's just, this is just music.
Mhm.
Um, I give you the story of the Mizzou football team a few years back. It might be like 2018, I believe, 2017. There was some racism going on at Mizzou University. A
Mm.
lot of Black organizers on campus were standing up to protest the hate crimes that were going on, the racial tactics, and the president at the school was not doing anything about it. He was not doing. He was just whatever. And students were protesting during the homecoming parade. Everything. He was ignoring them. All of a
Wow.
sudden, the football team said,
Mm.
"Okay, all right." They banded together, variety of different brothers and different backgrounds actually, and they said, "But we're not gonna play unless something's done." That president stepped down, I think, within a day.
Mhm.
Somebody fact check me on that, but I think it was within a day. He stepped down before the next game
Right.
because the money it generated. Like it's literally a game, but that's the most convenient. It's the bread and circuses of this country,
It's
and
the lifeblood and the financial gain of every institution. And the
it
majority of those that are in it are Black, you know,
exactly. It's
and they
Sunday.
don't get, like you were saying earlier, they don't get to actually benefit monetarily from it until more recently.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. Every Sunday, y'all. Every day over the summer, baseball, Sunday football, basketball season. Like if any of those a small percentage band together for anything that we have been fighting for collectively, things will change. And we saw that almost during COVID, with the NBA and what
Yeah.
was going on when they were in the bubble. If they made a little slight statement, they didn't go
Mhm.
full on because the understanding was, and they were called into the room, I'm sure, that if you fully go in on this, there's a lot of things that's gonna hurt, that's gonna start messing up, and it might be your
Mhm.
money. They always
Right.
throw that bone.
Right.
You might not
But they
get,
don't
you might never
realize.
get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
They
We
don't.
gotta
We don't realize, and let me personalize that. We don't
yeah.
realize our value. We don't
Mhm.
realize that if we move collectively, if we actually work in our best interest,
Yeah,
everybody else will have to follow.
yeah,
We kind of think about, what we have to lose, or they throw in our faces what we have to lose, but they don't realize we have everything to gain if we stick together.
exactly.
They cannot do anything. That's just like if when you look at your hand,
Yeah.
you can break off a finger, but once
Mhm.
you put these jokers together like this,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can't do anything with it. And that's
exactly.
the collective power that we have right here. So it's not just about an individualistic aspect.
Mhm.
That's what we got from Eurocentric culture.
Yeah,
The individual, dog eat dog. But once you put these appendages together and actually form a fist, there's nothing that can break them.
yeah. I mean, Colin Kaepernick again, using that as an example.
Absolutely.
I mean, he has been able to do very well, and he's become an icon because of the statement he made.
Yeah.
There were a couple. They were like, I think it was Eric Reed who got out there with them too. I'm sure there were some other folks. I can't remember the names right now, but
Mhm.
just imagine the how much further a lot of things would be if it was a collective thing, as opposed to some people talking down to him publicly, and years later after he's out the league trying to do different things, or form partnerships with the league and stuff like
Mhm.
that. It's just another example, man. And until we collectively, not individually, have that courage, a lot of these issues will remain. But I think
Yeah.
that we're waking up to it.
It reminds me of the cyclical nature of history. As you know, and most people don't even know this, but the whole Colin Kaepernick is kind of a retelling of what happened when it came down to Muhammad Ali. And you had the other athletes that banded around him. You had um oh
Bill
god, he
Russell,
just died. Yeah, Russell. You had Brown. What was his
and Jim
name? Jim Brown.
Brown,
And
Kareem. Yeah,
yeah, how they all banded around him, and that's how he was able to get back in because of that support when the athletes came together. And that was across sports. It wasn't just in boxing, it wasn't just in football, it
yeah,
wasn't just in NBA. He had Black athletes that came together. And the same thing, if we had that same unity that they had then with Kaepernick, this could have been a whole different situation.
yeah,
But in order to start wrapping this up and concluding, I see this as a part one. I feel like we're going to have a part
yeah.
two because this conversation definitely goes on beyond this story. But also, this is just the beginning of this story.
Mhm.
So we probably need to follow along with this.
Yeah,
But first of all, I want to thank you for sharing your time with us. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you for your commitment to our culture. That's the most important thing with this podcast, the culture podcast with the Keeper of the Jewels. we actually want to make sure that we are instilling in our people the importance of culture, our culture that has influenced the world over.
Yeah.
You know, so I want to thank you for your commitment to the culture. I want to encourage everybody to make sure they go ahead and follow you. You can follow Ernest on all social media. It's Mr. Crim III on almost all of his social media. Today we covered Mr. Crim's story. We also covered Michael Orr. I want you guys to make sure that you support Ernest in everything that he does. Make sure you get his books. Make sure you cover all his. Also, we forgot to talk about the Black History Club for kids. So make sure you guys are following him. Make sure you go to his website to find out any other information about all the amazing things and opportunities that he provides to advance your kids and also your knowledge. You know, we all need this as adults as well. So make sure you follow him. These are his handles here on, let's see, on Facebook. It's Mr. Crim III for 3. Instagram is the second one, Mr. Crim with the number 3. Same thing for Twitter and also for TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you guys support my brother. You cannot go wrong with definitely engaging in all his social media. The man is a social media or content creator mogul. Like, he puts out some of the best information that you can find that is supported by everybody across the world. He impacts over 2 million people monthly. Let that simmer. 2 million people monthly. This man has also, with his story, has impacted over 25 million people, has seen his story and actually has pushed him into the influencer that he is. So make sure we support our Black creators and educators. So I want to thank you for that. Also, everybody, please follow me on social media at the Keeper of the Jewels or at the Mr. Majestic on social media. Also, feel free to leave a review on this podcast episode. Make sure you go ahead. We're available in all your podcasting stations that you decide to go ahead and listen to. Support us there and definitely leave a review. Thank you so much. Again, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us and spending time with us here at The Culture with the Keeper of the Jewels. Ernest, thank you. Do you have any closing remarks?
Well, thanks for having me, man. And just shout out to you for the great work you're doing. So I'm proud of you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Well, guys, make sure you stay tuned. You will see us soon. We're going to do a part 2 of this, and definitely Ernest will be featured as much as he wants to be on this podcast. This is his second home. I want him to know that, and definitely stay tuned. Stay Black.